So the main step is the actual deployment of the update to a production system. But as we all agreed, it's not the first step. So let's look at what comes before that. Immediately before that, actually, let's also put the mantra. So it needs to be proactive, holistic, endpoint-centric, automated, and continuous, right? Let's see, what do we need to do before deploying an update for this particular process to be healthy? Well, we actually had somebody saying exactly this. Per, thank you. Deploying updates on a test environment, right? And we'll see the details on each of these. By the way, I hope you like the lack of symmetry, because this slide is not symmetrical at all. Now, before deploying updates on a test environment, I believe that's not the first step, right? So before that, you need to have awareness of what are the vulnerabilities, right? Because you don't just deploy updates out of nothing and just say, oh, I think this program might have an update. No, you need to have a way to know what's vulnerable. And before that, you need to have an inventory. This is the first step in patching, having a full, exhaustive inventory. Because if you don't know what you have, you don't know what could be vulnerable, you don't know what to test, you don't know what to patch. So guys, first step in patch management is knowing what you have to patch. And I will put some more details on all of these. Let's just see what comes after deploying an update to the production system. I believe you guys are all aware that this is not the last step, right? So what comes after is monitoring the successful deployment. So this is very important. Even if you deploy using a tool, whatever tool, you still need to be able to monitor the success of that deployment. And you also need to do reporting so that you can keep compliance. And last but not least, my favorite part of this particular non-symmetrical shape over here is a rinse and repeat process. It's basically never ending. It continues all the time, right? So let's put some more details on this, because this is not all of it, right? Otherwise, I would have put them nicely on the slide. Now, let's see, when we talk about inventory, what's the first thing we need to have in our inventory? What's our hardware, right? Software cannot be without hardware. But when I talk about hardware, I don't mean what are your computers. You need to know everything. So I know we have some managed service providers in the house. We have some software distributors. We have resellers. We even have pure users of the software, like internal IT departments from a company. So the first thing, guys, is know all your hardware, from switches, IoTs, printers, everything. Last but not least, computers and servers, right? Machines. But you need to know everything. Then from the hardware inventory, you can then branch out into what are your operating systems that you are using across your entire computer estate. And only then at the end, you branch out into what is your software estate. What are the applications that you use? Only when you have this holistic view, you know exactly what you need to patch, right? It's not enough just having the software or having the OSs. You need to have all three of them. Now, when it comes to being aware of what's vulnerable, you basically need to make sure you have processes in place, and processes at plural, right? Because hardware will need some processes, software would need some processes, OSs would need some processes. You need to make sure that you're aware of all the present and potential vulnerabilities based on that particular inventory. And we have Philip asking, do this patch management process cover mobile devices, and are they another attack vector that we need to consider? Philip, if the mobile devices are connecting to network resources or company resources, then yes, you do have this as a vulnerability. And if you look at this, let me put a laser pointer. So hardware, This is where you will also list your mobile devices. It's Internet of Things, right? And mobile devices have operating systems. It could be Android or iOS, right? And then you need to make sure that the third-party software on those particular machines, right? Even if it's a phone, it's still a machine, are up to date or are getting updated. And of course, you can use various tools. iOS usually updates itself, usually, so you don't need to worry about that. But you need to have a MDM that limits the user not to install things that they are not approved, and so on and so forth, and to see control. But yes, to answer your question, mobile devices are covered in this particular process. Okay, then I hope I answered the question. If not, just place it there in the question box and I'll continue. Now, this is interesting. Deploying on the test environment, guys. This is so funny because this is very time consuming, but it doesn't need to be. People usually don't do this because it eats away a lot of resources. However, if you do this in 2 steps, 2 easy steps, it should never consume too much resource on your behalf. First step is you need to create or to have production cloned environments, meaning if this particular organization that I'm in has 20 departments, right, and a few servers. So what I need to have in this test environment is a perfect live clone of each of the types of devices. So if I have 10 computers in department 1 that have the same things on them, same settings, same applications, same user role, then I need to have one clone of those 10 computers. If I have a manager's computer in that department that has a bit of a different approach in software and everything, I need to have another clone of that computer. So once I have all these clones made, and this is again based on the inventory, guys, inventory is the most important thing here, right? So after I have this and I have created, or I do have the cloned computers, I will do an automatical 24/7 patch test environment, and only when I see new information, new patches in my reports that the test environment received, I then test all their applications and their processes, which should be a list, right? What do you do at work? What applications do you open, right? So I test those, and then if nothing breaks, in that moment, I am 100% sure that that hardware update, like firmware, or that OS update, or that software update will not impact my production unit, because at the end of the day, a business needs to run. Computers are here to help humans do their job. So if a computer is down, the company is losing money in that moment. So that's what we want to avoid. Now, how would we do this? We can do it, right, as IT, as a managed service provider and so on, or smarter. You can have some people, right, that are very, very IT savvy in those respective teams, and you can consider or their computers or virtual machines clones from their computers as the test environment. So they know how to quickly react, they know how to take another computer and continue work, and they know how to notify you if something happened. So this is a key step, guys. If you want to risk it a bit, there are a few cases out there in the world where this could actually break your productivity, but this doesn't happen all day long. And if we go a bit and ask ourselves, when did this last happen? I believe it was Print Nightmare, when all the computers had blue screen and nobody could connect to their computers across the world, affected about 40% of computers across the world. And that was an OS update. People that had the test environment and a hold on the production environment did not face any problems with Print Nightmare. So I would like all of you to be in the category of the people that did not face any problem. And this is how you do it. Next up, deploying on production systems. So again, looking at the inventory, we need to have a few components here, right? When it comes to hardware, we always suggest doing manual updates. This is a bit dangerous not to do manual updates, right? Usually with hardware, it's a bit difficult to do automated updates by default. it's a combination between a manual and semi-automatic way. But when it comes to the other ones, OS and software, you should do automated and scheduled updates for operating systems and automated and scheduled updates for third-party software, only in an ideal fashion, only if the testing was successful, right? Some people automate 80% of the OS updates and just leave about 20% for testing, like the dangerous updates, like drivers and upgrades. Some other people automate 90% of their software updates, but just keep 10%, which are software that if I update this, it can break this other thing, like Java, for example, Java, depending on the pronunciation, right? Or Adobe, something like that. So there's no ideal way. Looking at this, it's like you don't need to follow this. You need to match this with what your company needs, right? Now, when it comes to monitoring the successful deployment of updates, what's important it is to validate successful install, and the ones that did not successfully install, you need to have a plan for them. You need to know why they didn't install, and you need to know when it's the next attempt to install. And last but not least, when it comes to reporting, you need to have recurring reports for compliance and also for the activity reports. So if you look at the patching tool, it kind of needs to help you with the majority of this. No patching tool in the world, and this is something I can promise, can do all of this for you, because patch management is not just the updating part. It's a process. It's like privilege access management. It's an entire strategy of the company that does use some tools in order to make it happen. But this is not just tools, it's also you and the way you formulate this process for you. And the rinse and repeat means whenever you have new hardware, whenever you have new software, whenever you have anything new, it needs to go through inventory, be added in the inventory. Then you need to make sure you know where you can see if there's anything vulnerable and so on, right? So you need to make sure that you can follow all of this snake type of flow that I made here. And with this snake flow, you need to make sure that this new item that you have in your inventory can actually be a part of it. If not, it's a problem.